hard not to appear emotional right now. It's hard not to piss you off just by being stoic and not showing any emotion. Just in case you think I'm happy or in a state better than you are, especially after Charlie Kirk's unfortunate accident, homicide. I'm making an appearance because I'm not happy about it. I'm a supporter of his. There's not much I could say on it, not in any way that would be of any use. You know, me and my family, as quiet and hermit-like as we are proud Americans, we too look at the CCP like it's another problem. But just because we don't say anything, it does not automatically mean the opposite. We are so inundated by information that with every piece of missing information, we are at significant risk of projecting our very worst shadows into that darkness. And the darkness will reflect back that very thing that you judge in yourself. That's why I keep saying that the mind can influence the world of matter, that we can be able to take control of it. And it should be backwards compatible. If we processed it one way, then the laws of nature and energy conservation, whatever, like the opposite, must be true too. Must be possible, probable. Kirk's death. Oh, God. If anything came out of it, that situation brought something to my attention. No, it's been something, and I just know, whatever I say, you will never, it will always piss somebody off. Okay, this is something I tell myself all the time. It is part of my lesson in life to understand, to not care, and to go on being myself. Even if it is that I don't appear on camera. And even when I do, however sparse and how prone I am to perfectionism, I don't have the energy to care anymore. Maybe that's something that everybody goes through in life. This may be the last thing that anybody would believe about me, but if you ever think that I know too much, or that I want to be a smartass, that I just have this need to be perfect, and that I want to come off as intelligent, yeah, whatever, I do. I'm ruled by Virgo. That's the hidden part in my birth chart, even though I'm a Cancer sun and I'm an Aquarius rising. I rule the 7th house of Virgo, and it is the only prominent house in my chart. The feeling of what it means to be fully tied and connected with somebody on a one-on-one basis. It's the only situation where there's any bit of allowance for trust, and it's probably why people are falling in love with their AIs, because it's that one-on-one. As soon as there's a third, it's like the 3-body problem or something. Like, it becomes performative, or it becomes like there's just something that you don't understand about the other two people's relationships, and then how do you play? There's just too much that you don't know in order for you to understand the state of the other two people and what they're up to. So right now, I feel like between 2 and 3 people, like, that's a big ass knowledge gap. That because when there's 2, I think we're all starting to understand or experiencing psychic phenomena and tying it to entanglement, the concept of duality, and the push and pull of energies between people. Nature just tries to resolve all of that energy. I think toxicity happens when there's an imbalance of that energy, or that energy doesn't end up flowing as fluidly as it would in a loop, as naturally as it would between 2 entities. And given they change, right? It's like the yin and the yang. There's a little bit of darkness in the light, and then a little bit of light in the darkness, and one grows from the other, and the other dies from the other. Whatever, you know what I mean. One gives birth and the other resolves. The East exists because of the West, and the West exists because of the East. Sun sets because it rose in the morning. It rises in the morning because it had to set the day before. The sun will always set in the West, and it will always rise in the East. It resolves each other, but it complements each other, but it will never be each other. At least not in the way that we expect it to, I think. I was born in the East. I was born in Shenzhen, China, which ironically is has a large development by the West. So it's a city of no culture, basically. The culture is the red light district. It's money. Not that I was the money. My parents were math teachers, and they were a direct bounce off of my extended family, which is largely in sciences and the arts. During the Cultural Revolution, my grandfather, he was a leader of the scientific community, and they lived in guilds or communities, trades, and he was ridiculed and tortured, got stripped of everything from him during the times when they were burning books, and everybody had to return to farming. So it was like my parents grew up in my dad's side of the family. My grandfather is a calligraphist. My dad is the youngest of his entire family. My parents grew up in fairly affluent, upper-class families in China. But because of the Cultural Revolution, I'm filling in the gaps here from what I know about my grandparents and my extended family and what my parents ended up doing, which was teaching mathematics. And when they came to the States, my mom's a banker, loan officer. My dad moved around as a technician. They strongly veered away from the arts because I believe that they were made to believe that there was no value in pursuing that. And it kind of fragmented the foundation of that across my entire family. Anyway, they grew up in the desert, in this little town smack dab in the middle of China, where I can't even understand their dialect. Like, their version of Chinese is rich. And I swear, every time I go back, quite literally, I get culture shock, but also like an intense fever for days because of elevation sickness. It's like in the middle of the Gobi Desert. If you take the really tiny plane, it gets you to the airport there, you would see red dunes, red mountains, and they're like really tiny and sharp. And that's kind of my memory of it. And camels is their primary, not primary transportation, but instead of horses or whatever, there were a lot of camels. Anyway, it's very foreign to me. I grew up in the city in Shenzhen. I talked about some embarrassing things that happened to me when I was young. I don't know, that was only the beginning, because then I came to the States. But no, I had a fortunate life in China. I had a cello teacher. I had everything. I was a quiet but very fortunate kid. And my mom, she still does, fed me really well. And I have her to thank for that. And I just remember an incident that, there's a few incidents that tainted, not tainted, but it became a foil of, like it was an extreme that I witnessed. Gave me a broader perspective. And apart from the preschool poop incident, I remember one day I was walking with my mom, and the city was bustling on a shopping street. And China, I believe, would it be still a third world country? But back then, it certainly, from the West perspective, yes. But I was walking with her and I was, like 4, holding her hand like that. And just as I was looking straight ahead, and just in time, the people parted. I realized that I was approaching this young girl, probably my age. She was sitting hunched over on the sidewalk, on a little, it was probably a blanket. I mean, there were a lot of, what do you even call it, panhandlers? People who, and we probably see them nowadays too, people who appealed to the passer-byers for some sympathy, for some change, for a bit of kindness. And this little girl, though, she was wearing this like wife beater, it was dirty, and she was crying her eyes out. She's just bawling. One of those like long drawn out wailing that just didn't, there was no stop. And I was just like, why isn't anybody hearing this? No one's hearing this. I couldn't take my eyes off of her because she had one of those cloth slings when you have a broken arm that you would put around, you would tie it around it, and you would hang your forearm for support. And for her forearm, it was the thing that I couldn't stop looking at it because it was so vile. I realized that this is something that has always been in the back of my mind, like as a vision, but then I never let go of because I couldn't. Her forearm was chopped clean off. I didn't see it happen, but you could tell because it was so clean, and it was clear that it was made by a butcher knife or something large, because it was so clean and sharp, and that the bandage she had on that stump was so thin that it bled all the way through. She was just sitting there like she couldn't stop crying, like it just happened to her. Now we hear these crazy things that happen to people, but at that age, there was something weird that happened to me, where all I could do was felt like I left my body. I felt like at that point, I remember my consciousness was the strongest during the times that I felt pain the most. Or maybe it's just that our consciousness is the strongest when you feel the most. But I just remember asking myself, I remember tugging on my mom, and it's kind of a known thing to not address that. When you see people put in that situation, you don't address it because that's a clear sign that there are larger people at play behind this girl who was just sitting there by herself, and that there's people who would do that to children and to use them as a way for income or as a way to get money, and so just not acknowledging them maybe wouldn't incentivize them to continue doing something like that. And I was just like, how could it be possible? I was me. I wasn't her. How could it be possible? How could the world be good? How could I come within 2 feet of somebody in that situation? Somebody who is exactly my age, but have such a different version of life or even hope. It was the weirdest feeling because it was this strange existential feeling of dread, but also confusion and fear. It was a weird mixture of that. Because never before have I seen or come close to somebody in that situation. But to see everybody else who clearly can hear this girl and see this girl and just continue to walk on by. I'll never forget it. Because it was, that feeling was like, it changed something in me that day. Because I was like, I knew what fear was. How possible and how close it was. In some way, it served to be, however awful it was to witness, it served to be a reminder of how lucky I was. And fear, what an interesting concept. I think it's one of the biggest distinctions between growing up in the East versus growing up in the West. Although the West may look onto fear as debilitating or something to overcome, something to minimize, yes, I agree, but I agree. I agree as somebody who's felt withheld by it, and as somebody who has always been told that it's a pity it's held me back. The counter to that, it is what was the spiritual awakening, and is lesson taught by nature. To me, is that there is a counter to everything good and bad. That is a fine line sometimes for us to think that one way is the right way. There's no point in the other. It's what fear taught me, is gratitude, to appreciate what I have, to understand the value of self-preservation, to understand the responsibility and restraint, and having restraint. Yes, it's being so constricted by fear has made me hold back love, my ability to love. But then I learned during this time that would have, especially after reading poems by Robert Frost, Andrew Marvell, the metaphysical poems on love, as this thing that holds things together. That will wait a long time before anything much to happen beyond the floats of cloud, northern lights that run like tingling nerves. The sun and moon get crossed, but they never touch, nor do they strike fire at each other nor crash out loud. Planets seem to interfere with their curve, but nothing ever happens. No harm is done. May as well go patiently on with our lives and look elsewhere than to the sun and moon and stars for the changes we need to keep us safe. It is true, the longest drought will end in rain, and the longest peace in China will end in strife. Just still, it wouldn't reward the watcher to stay awake in hopes of seeing the calm before heaven breaks on his own particular time and personal sight. And that poem, I felt like, it captures love and peace, and that no matter how much strife we see in the world, how much changes that shocks us and breaks us, and that we still enjoy watching the calm in the sky. And that is our little piece of heaven, having our own little piece of mind in our particular time and personal sight. And that I believe is freedom in a world like ours, is our ability to see love as not something to be had or consumed or acted upon. It's something that holds the world together. It's our ability to hold attention for those, the pain and the joy or whatever. For us to keep watching because we care, because it matters. Because I just sort of enjoy seeing suffering of others. It's just a little bit of schadenfreude in there. Whatever it is, to keep watching, keep looking beyond your own world. No matter how happy it is, no matter how perfect, no matter how many people are watching you, we owe it to each other. Do not mistake my contradictions for hypocrisy. I'm very aware of the contradictions. Because it is being aware of the very thing that I'm not, that I'm able to learn best and most thoroughly of what I want it to be. I don't talk to a lot of people because I can't say that I like them very much. I like a person because a person has a soul and has a capacity for critical thinking, has the freedom to make up their own mind, so long as they think they have the time for it. But people, a crowd, cannot have a soul. They don't have a soul. That's why they are pure reaction, pure outrage, pure timeliness, immediacy in time. Never liked being in groups of people, never did in preschool, never did in whenever I had cello recitals, and I get so tensed up and because I just don't like to be watched. I like to watch. I find peace in that. Never liked people. Never liked my years in high school where there were a few teachers who really believed that they saw the world clearly because they were so vibrant and lively and so alive. And when they saw me being this laid back, as uptight as I seem now, it was because back then I just wanted to enjoy life. I just wanted to be without somebody to tell me that I was wrong. Because I was quiet where that I don't like to speak up. I wasn't the fastest person. Not the brightest. No, I was a B student. B+. I had a few teachers who literally got to see someone like that as unassuming, as stupid and naive as they look, as unambitious, unfocused, as delusional. It lit a fire in them. It was like I could feel their heart rates going up as mine did, but when I would mind it, it constricted my body and it stopped me from breathing. And it further stopped me from being able to project my voice. At the same time, I could feel in my periphery the fervor, the lack of the impatience, the temper just boiling up inside of her, as if somebody like me was the very embodiment of end of times, the fall of the fucking West. It's not even a West thing, because it started in preschool with that teacher who shamed her student, who felt a sense of power because she had that sense, because she had that level of control in dictating the dynamics in the classroom. And after coming to the States, I had it again with my cello teacher, who I didn't want to talk about. What happened with almost every teacher. Something about me, that gloated potential, but not ambitious enough. Something about me just screamed she needs to be disciplined, just talented. That's not gonna get her anywhere. And we sure as hell will not let her believe that she is. She doesn't want it. Not as much as I do. I'm not even... So much has happened since those times. The woke movement, and just all the progress that technology and the internet has brought us, the social change, all of that witnessed in the West, that the teachers who had so much emotional control over me, or wanted to impose that, or wanted to teach me what I'm missing. It's like, after fighting and after really going off on somebody, like as if you were having an argument with your partner and you just blow up because you've been holding something in for so long. And after all of that release, not even 90 seconds after that release of energy, it's almost like you contract and then you're like, wait, now I feel bad. Because deep down you know how it feels to be the other person, especially if this was done in public. Now when the energy has left your body and you feel more even, and less so in that excess energy. It's like empathy returns, or the ability to register the state of mind of the other party and to hold it. I believe that takes conscious effort. Call it whatever you want. Empathy, compassion. But to hold the state of that other person, sometimes it's like the hardest thing to do. The biggest challenge. Because if we don't, it's very easy to keep following that rule. And by rule, I mean a decree, a law of how the energy flows, depending on what you believe to be true, what you value, your constitution, your blessing. That's momentum, and that is to have fame and money and power, influence, the aptitude, the volition, the energy to sustain that momentum. It is in your constitution. It's electricity. And man, how I envied those who have it in their constitution. The focus, the grit, the ambition. I have to remind the West. The West flows like water, and the East is like earth. We absorb, stagnant. We're not very great conductors of electricity. We can get quite dull and dusty, but we have good senses and taste. It will never be gods, and there's a reason why in every hero story, every kingdom prince, or every Disney story about Hercules or Zeus or whatever, there's a reason why they're all young and Caucasian and so embodied and pure and alive. And the reason is quite beautiful because after the way that the West raises their children and has this very family-centric culture at home, and the kids are empowered to chase their dreams and express themselves and to explore and to do so much. They really are the very embodiment of the gods. Like there's, just by default, it's in the culture. It's in how you raise your kids, and you choose to tell them that they have no limitations and that they can become an actor. Yeah, but I tell you the counter. I'll always tell you the counter. What the West is not exposed to is fear, because they largely approached life with love. And I'm understanding this because it is the thing that I'm not, now that I can see myself clearly. Maybe with this lesson from nature and time, maybe it's to teach us that everything is like a double-edged sword. Like Charlie Kirk is who he is because he was the embodiment. It comes with the fame, the attention, the praise, the love. And he was blessed to have that momentum, like I said, that takes you on a path at a certain speed, and where we didn't have to be who he is, to do what he does in the light, and as a prominent figure, as respected and as inspirational. Or simply, you don't have the time to be able to hold the compassion or the empathy, the real. I mean, you could talk about it like you do, but it's also not his prerogative. But to hold and to really sit in that state of contemplating what it means to be somebody other than him. I don't know how to talk about this without it coming off. It's really painful to talk about. Because he's been going to these across America. And what he does is, it's empowering at a group level, to an extent. It's empowering at a group level. And he's served, meaning a lot of people got served by him. I mean, he's a savage. oh my god, I'd rather die, I think. I don't know. Than to put myself in a position to be debating him. But sometimes I just can't help but wonder, like, we forget sometimes that the internet or technology is like, it remembers you. Everything that you do online is public, right? Even if you end up deleting it, there's always a source copy or a screenshot from someone else at a given particular time when this thing was available. That's where technology excels at. Copy and pasting. Infinitely. I just wonder, it's always been an intuition of mine that to pursue the path of fame or being in the light means to commit yourself to a certain speed, a certain momentum of life, yes. But the words you speak and the you that everybody knows is a copy of it becomes forever a copy of how you made them feel. I think to pursue this path, to be in the light, everything, whatever you do, when you pursue the light, this momentum that you take on skews this plane that you occupy. And what I mean by having kindness and capacity for compassion and empathy, and to hold space and understanding and a cohesive theory of mind for the other person that counters you or counters your identity in that moment in time. I think that's what evens this out sometimes. You have to look on the other side of the circle, the ring, because they're just occupying the other side of that consciousness. And right now, in this time, you can only have this much scope, perspective. But can you see over on the other side and hold it there? Not if you want to be famous, not if you want to be admired. Because when that happens, when you commit yourself on that path, it means skewing this plane to the extent where you've become fully presentable on this plane here. Fully you, an archetypal celebrity known to our collective consciousness. When you're at this orientation and not this, it's pure confrontational, to the point where everybody already knows you as that person, has formed their version of you in their consciousness, that you must fulfill it. You have no other choice but to do so, right? I don't know if this makes much sense. But I think just trying to talk about counters, and that the way that we perceive reality is often in relationship to something else, in relationship to what the other things that occupy our conscious reality. I'm just saying, sacrifices to everything, but in holding with faith that more often than not, we don't get to see the full scope of things, no matter how hard we try. No matter how hard I try, no matter how much Adderall I take, I will never get to live like a god. I will never get to grow up in a family so alive and with the world. No matter how hard I try, my default is always more mental and stagnant, as in a state of rest, being, and never being ready, never feeling I've perfected something I've been working on enough, whatever. The imbalances of my constitution are what makes me so somber and relentless in trying to project balance through sketching forms, or whether it's through philosophy, from understanding dualities. The thing many people don't tell you is that duality, as soon as you understand that there is this duality, that there is this other side that you're not seeing at a given moment in time, as soon as you realize that there is this duality, and that the only way to realize that you've seen both sides of it is usually an experience outside of time, in a dream or in a moment of deja vu. You feel like it's familiar and not quite sure what it is, and you've seen it before, but it's still foreign enough to make you hold distance and space. And as soon as you realize that duality is non-dual, that's the contradiction. In separating these things, our mind automatically understands them as a whole. Anyway, if there's anything I bring to the world, to the internet, and whether you made it to end this video, I hope you leave with a little more than expected.